everyone. I am back. Here is another episode of Politics for Beginners. This is episode 4. We're going to be talking about redistricting and why politicians are fighting over maps right now. Also, welcome back. Welcome back to Politics for Beginners. Today we are going to talk about, I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes. We're going to talk about something that sounds really boring. However, it actually has a huge impact on who controls Congress. And remember, in prior episodes, we talked about how important having the majority in Congress is. Well, it kind of starts with each district, and each district sends someone to Congress. So you may be asking yourself, what the hell is redistricting? What is it? Why does everyone keep talking about it? So America is divided into voting districts. Every 10 years after the census, states redraw those maps based on population changes. Remember that. It's supposed to be every 10 years. Also, that is why filling out that census is very important, because that tells you how the districts are going to be, how the district maps are going to be cut up, depending on how many people are in districts. So here's the problem. The people that are usually drawing these maps are the politicians. And politicians often draw maps that help their own party win. That's called gerrymandering, right? So you're going to hear both of those things. You're going to hear the redistricting and you're going to hear gerrymandering. For example, a party might draw district lines in strange shapes to pack opposing voters into one district, or spread them out across many districts so their votes have less power. They're diluted. Just to give an example of what's actually happening right now. Republicans are set to probably lose the House of Representatives and the Senate, meaning that Democrats may get the majority in both of those places, and then they will be the majority in Congress. And we talked about what Congress is made up of. So because Republicans don't want to actually do the work that will actually make voters want to vote for them, they figure they will gerrymander, redistrict, redraw their maps so that they don't have to do the work, because it has not been 10 years. So it's not time to redraw the maps due to a census, right? Because it hasn't been, it's every 10 years. So they're doing it early, and they're doing it early because Donald Trump went to Texas and said, hey, you need to find more seats. And that's what Texas did. So Texas immediately went and redrew their map. So what that does is it dilutes the black vote. And that's the most important thing, right? Like Texas, Tennessee just did it. And that was a really big thing, because Tennessee only had one minority district, one black district, because Tennessee is a really red state. So they had one black district. So, the people of color, the black people, African Americans in that district were able to vote for who they wanted to. They were able to send someone to Congress to represent them. They were able to send someone to the House of Representatives that represented them for their district. So if you take that district, that Democratic district made up of all of these black voices, and you chop it up and you sprinkle some black people in this district with a whole bunch of Republicans, and then put them in this district with other Republicans, that means that the black people who are voting in those new districts, they're not really going to be heard, because it's such a heavy Republican district. Their voices aren't going to be heard, because Republicans are going to win that district by the mere fact that there were already Republican districts, and you're chopping up a black district to sprinkle black people in those districts. So that means that the black people of Tennessee will have no representation. So that is the gerrymandering. That is the gerrymandering. You may say, Democrats have done the same. They only did it in response to Texas. But the way Democrats have done it, like California and Gavin Newsom, he put it to a vote. So there's a special election. So Californians voted to redraw the maps. They voted for it, right? It was an open question. Is this what you want? The same thing in Virginia. They voted on redistricting, on redrawing their maps. That's what they voted for, right? And again, this is in response to Trump saying, Tennessee, redraw your maps. Iowa, redraw your maps. Like telling all the Alabama, redraw your maps. Mississippi, redraw your maps. Like, so it's in response. But again, the Democrats have done it in the right way. But with Virginia, the state Senate in Virginia, the Senate in the state, because remember we talked about that. There's the Senate that's in the Congress, United States Congress, and then there are state senates, right? Majority Republicans. They're like, no, this is illegal. You can't do that. So now the Virginians, the state of Virginia, has to go to the Supreme Court to deal with that because the state Senate is saying, Virginia, you can't do that. And they're only saying that because they are Republican. What all of this means ultimately is that politicians are picking their voters instead of voters picking their politicians. Like, this is what's happening with this gerrymander. When is this supposed to happen? It's supposed to happen every 10 years after the census. The last census was in 2020. So you can see we're early. This is only 2026, so we're super early. Why are states suddenly changing maps again? We just talked about that. Because both parties are trying to gain advantages before future elections. However, Republicans started it. Why is this happening now? One big reason is control of the House of Representatives, like I said. The House is often decided by only a handful of seats. So even changing a few districts can change who controls Congress. Another reason is the Supreme Court. Recent court decisions weaken some protections against the racial and partisan gerrymandering, giving states more freedom to draw maps. And that's very important here. So the Supreme Court is like, no, you can't redraw maps based on race, right? So the whole purpose of redistricting and gerrymandering initially was to, racial justice, right, was to give Black people a vote, right? To give Black people a chance to get representation. So that's why a lot of the maps were redrawn before, because Black people were not getting any representation, right? Because of the way the maps were. The maps were extremely gerrymandered, positive for the Republicans and negative for Democrats, which most African Americans are. So the recent court decisions have weakened the Voting Rights Act. So that's why they're like, you can't draw it because of race, but you can you can't redraw maps because of race. This is the Supreme Court. But you can redraw maps because of politics, which doesn't make any sense, because they're literally, Republicans are redrawing maps because of race, right? It's actually both. Because of race, because they know that African Americans mostly vote Democrats. So they're redrawing maps because of race and because of politics. We know that. However, we also know that the Supreme Court, majority Republicans. So they don't care about Black voices. And we talked about this in prior episodes. So in conclusion, it's supposed to happen every 10 years after the census. Both parties are now pushing mid-decade map changes to gain political advantages before future elections. Supporters call it strategy, critics call it rigging, and again, this would not have even began had Trump not went to Texas to ask them to find him, in essence, more seats. The fight over maps has become one of the biggest political battles in America today. We will talk about we'll figure out what we're going to talk about in episode 5. But I felt like talking about gerrymandering was important since we are seeing it live. It's happening just every day. It's happening, so it's important to know why it's happening, what's to gain, how it goes down, is it legal. So thanks for listening to Politics for Beginners, and I will see you next time when we will figure out what we're going to do in episode 5. Thank you.